Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow morning, but something is irrevocably different. Not just the dull buzz of an alarm clock or the bleary haze of unfinished dreams, but a profound rupture in the very fabric of your consciousness. You open your eyes and the world looks the same. Same colors, same shapes, same familiar faces. But beneath the surface, a disturbing truth gnaws at you. The life you've been living, the thoughts you've been having, the beliefs you've been clinging to, none of it is truly yours. Maybe it's a carefully constructed illusion, a scripted reality so deeply embedded within you that waking up to it feels more like slipping through a crack in time than a gentle morning stretch. Now consider the paradox. We all cherish waking up as the ultimate metaphor for awareness, for enlightenment, for the shedding of ignorance. Wake up, we tell each other. See the truth. Yet the vast majority remain ensnared in a collective slumber, blind to the mechanics of their own minds, deaf to the subtle calls of deeper understanding. How is it possible that in a world brimming with information, connection, and opportunity, so few actually rise beyond the surface? Is waking up merely an accident of chance, reserved for the lucky few? Or is there something more insidious preventing most people from ever piercing the veil? It's an unsettling thought. The world teems with billions of individuals, each seemingly unique, yet bound by invisible chains of complacency, distraction, and conditioned thought. Imagine standing in a dense forest where every tree looks identical, every bird's song blends into a monotonous hum, and the sky above is perpetually overcast. You know there is a clearing somewhere, a place where sunlight breaks through, where the air feels lighter, where the horizon expands beyond what you've been told is the edge of the world. But no matter how far you walk, the canopy thickens and your path is swallowed by shadow. What if that forest is your own mind? What if the clearing is the awakening you seek, but it remains just out of reach, obscured by fear, habit, and cultural inertia? You might ask then, what does it truly mean to wake up? Is it a sudden epiphany, a blinding flash of insight that shatters illusions and reveals unfiltered reality? Or is it a slow unraveling, a subtle but relentless process of peeling back layers until all that remains is bare, raw truth? Perhaps it is both, and yet, paradoxically, it remains elusive for most because it demands a confrontation with discomfort, a willingness to dissolve the safe narratives that have cushioned their existence. What stories have you been telling yourself? The comforting lie of control, the illusion of permanence, the carefully curated identity that feels like home. Waking up means dismantling these pillars. And so, why do so many choose, consciously or unconsciously, to stay asleep? Is it cowardice, inertia, or the seductive power of the familiar? Consider this. Even if you sense that there is more to reality than the surface, the very desire to awaken can be met with resistance. You are offered distractions endlessly, screens that glow with artificial life, routines that numb, social rituals that enforce conformity. The mind, ever a master of self-preservation, builds walls of denial that feel like solid security rather than brittle chains. Waking up threatens that security. It threatens the persona you've cultivated, the social roles you inhabit, the future you imagine. How many have tried to break free, only to recoil back into the known? How many have glimpsed the edges of dawn, only to mistake the first light for a cruel mirage? And here lies the ultimate irony. In a culture that worships progress, innovation, and knowledge, the majority remain spiritually and psychologically asleep. They consume information but resist transformation. They seek answers but avoid the questions that truly matter. How can this be? How do you reconcile a civilization capable of sending probes to distant planets with one that is mostly unconscious, trapped in cycles of suffering and superficiality? Perhaps waking up is less about acquiring new knowledge and more about unlearning, shedding the blinders, dismantling frameworks of delusion that have calcified over generations. But unlearning is terrifying. Imagine losing the very foundation on which your sense of self stands. What do you become when the stories you live by dissolve? What emptiness do you face beyond the comforting noise? The question then morphs into a more pressing one. Can you afford not to wake up? Is it possible to continue sleepwalking through your days without the cost of a slow death to your spirit, your creativity, your sense of connection and meaning? Yet if most people will never wake up, what separates those who do? Is it a rare gift, an accident, or a deliberate choice? And if choice is the key, what does it demand from you? What courage, what sacrifice, what relentless inquiry? The paradox tightens its grip. The more you reach for truth, the more you confront your deepest fears, the more you crave freedom, the more you realize that waking up is not a destination but a lifelong crucible. Not everyone has the will to endure such a journey. So here you are, standing at the precipice of awakening, or perhaps at the crossroads of eternal slumber. The question is no longer theoretical. It is a question that cuts to your core. Will you remain asleep, lulled by illusions, or will you dare to wake? But before you answer, understand that waking up is not a simple act. It is a process woven with contradictions, sacrifices, and moments of profound revelation, and it challenges everything you think you know about yourself and the world. To comprehend why most people never wake up, you must first enter the labyrinth where sleep and wakefulness blur, where comfort becomes a cage, and where the mind's deepest mechanisms resist illumination. This is where the journey truly begins, a descent into the shadows you never dared explore, a confrontation with the forces that keep humanity captive in its own dream. Because if you do not understand these forces, if you do not recognize the chains that bind, you risk remaining a prisoner forever, asleep in plain sight. Are you ready to see what lies beneath the surface? Are you prepared to question everything? Because the weight of this question is not just philosophical, it is existential. And the answers you seek may demand more than you realize. The forest waits. The clearing is near, but the path is treacherous. The choice to wake is yours alone. But first, you must understand why most never even try. Imagine for a moment that the mind is not a sanctuary of clarity but a sprawling theater of shadows, where the self is fragmented and veiled beneath layers of illusion and repression. What if the very architecture of your consciousness is designed, whether by evolution, culture, or cosmic irony, to shroud you in comforting myths that resist the piercing light of truth? This is no mere poetic musing. It is the cold calculus of psychology and philosophy that reveals why the vast majority remain locked within the somnolent prison of ignorance, trapped by their own mechanisms of denial. Carl Jung, the pioneer of the unconscious, spoke of the shadow as that hidden part of ourselves we refuse to face, the dark impulses, fears, and desires lurking beneath our polished exteriors. The psyche, Jung warned, is a battleground where light and dark wrestle for dominion. To wake up, then, demands an encounter with this shadow, a descent into the obscure recesses of the self. But how many dare to peer there? How many prefer the comforting narratives of identity, secured by social roles and collective dogmas, rather than the terrifying abyss beneath? This reluctance is not merely psychological comfort, it is survival. The mind's primary function, after all, is to preserve the organism, to protect against existential threats, real or imagined. Here lies a paradox. Awakening means dismantling the very defenses the mind erects. To see the world as it really is, stripped of illusions, is to expose oneself to unbearable anxiety and the dissolution of the self as it has been constructed. It is to gamble with madness, with despair, and sometimes with death itself. Friedrich Nietzsche dared to name this confrontation with reality as the abyss, warning that when one stares into it long enough, the abyss stares back. Nietzsche's Übermensch is not a simple hero, but the rare individual who accepts this gaze and forges meaning beyond the comforting fictions of herd morality and passive acceptance. Yet he also acknowledged that most people recoil, preferring the herd instinct to the isolating clarity of self-overcoming. The herd thrives on repetition, conformity, and the tranquilizing lullabies of consensus. In that cesspool of sameness, the self dies a slow, unremarked death, replaced by a mask woven from collective approval. Arthur Schopenhauer, with his bleak metaphysics, deepened this understanding. For him, life itself was an insatiable will, a blind, relentless force driving all existence, indifferent to suffering and oblivious to reason. To wake from the dream of self and desire is to glimpse the futility of this ceaseless striving. Yet to awaken fully is to face the despair of meaninglessness, the void where purpose dissolves unless one dares to create it anew. How many can bear such an existential burden? How many prefer the sweet narcotic of distraction, of immersion in trivial pursuits and superficial pleasures, rather than confront the abyss of nothingness? Aldous Huxley, who drank deeply from the well of mysticism and science alike, foresaw this predicament in his chilling prophecy of a brave new world. He recognized that society would increasingly manufacture consent through pleasure and conditioning, placing the individual in a synthetic cocoon where questions die before they arise. This is not tyranny wielded through chains and torture, but a more insidious domination, the domestication of desire and thought itself. Here lies the societal force that binds millions, the seduction of comfort, the allure of conformity, and the manufactured amnesia that makes waking not only undesirable but almost impossible. Jean-Paul Sartre, wrestling with existentialism's weight, illuminated how freedom is simultaneously a gift and a curse. The moment you recognize your freedom to choose, you also inherit the crushing responsibility for your existence. The nausea Sartre described is not just a metaphor but a visceral recoil at realizing that there is no preordained meaning, no cosmic script. Most flee this nausea into bad faith, hiding behind roles, ideologies, or the anonymity of the crowd. It is easier to be someone else, a character in a story authored by society or tradition, rather than the anguished author of your own life. The tragedy is that this bad faith is a choice, the choice to remain asleep. Viktor Frankl, who endured the depths of human suffering in Nazi concentration camps, found that meaning is not a luxury but a lifeline. Yet even he acknowledged that meaning is elusive, requiring a readiness to suffer, to transcend oneself, and to confront brutal realities with courage. To awaken is to embrace this perilous pursuit of meaning amidst chaos, and the overwhelming majority shy away, preferring the numbing safety of a purposeless drift. What emerges from these thinkers, from psychology to philosophy, is a portrait of a human condition caught in a cruel bind. Waking requires shattering illusions, enduring chaos, and embracing autonomy. Yet these very acts threaten the fragile architecture of identity and belonging, plunging one into isolation and despair. The chains that keep most asleep are not forged in iron, but in self-deception, habit, and a carefully constructed social order that rewards submission over inquiry. This hidden force operates beneath the surface of everyday life, seeping into behavior and emotions. Fear is its ally, fear of loneliness, failure, insignificance. Anxiety is both symptom and sentinel, warning of the dangers lurking in unmasking truth. Identity becomes a theater of compromises, a fragile shield erected against the unsettling void beyond the veil of consciousness. You may feel it now as a quiet resistance within yourself, the hesitation to question too deeply, the pull toward distraction, the seduction of certainty despite its hollow core. And yet there is something more, a deeper consequence, a shadow that stretches beyond personal awakening. Because this sleep is not merely individual, it is collective. A slumber that ensures systems of power and control endure, that perpetuates cycles of violence and neglect, and that allows apathy and complicity to flourish. The sleepers, unwittingly, become architects of their own chains, their passivity a crucible for oppression on every scale. So the tension mounts, between the safety of oblivion and the terror of awareness, between the comfort of illusion and the pain of truth, you stand at a crossroads more profound than any before. The forces that bind are formidable, deeply embedded in your psyche, your society, your very neurons. To wake is to battle not just external structures but the dark territories within yourself. And in that battle, many falter. But what if faltering is not failure, but a step toward something greater? What if the abyss you dread holds not only despair but also the seed of transformation? Before you find that out, you must first recognize the gravity of what keeps most asleep, the tangled web of psychological defense, philosophical dread, and societal sedation that envelops human existence like a smothering fog. The fog is dense. It clings to your skin and seeps into your thoughts. To walk out of it demands courage you might not yet realize you possess. Yet, to remain is to surrender your soul to a dream of shadows, a life half-lived beneath a fragile veil. Can you feel the weight of this unseen force pressing down upon you? It is the invisible hand that steers the human spirit toward slumber, toward conformity, toward the quiet death of consciousness. And this is only the beginning. You have wandered deeper into the labyrinth now, the shadows thickening around your mind like fog rolling over a forgotten moor. Yet, what's most insidious is how invisible these chains are, the way they twist through your thoughts, your emotions, your very sense of what is real and true. It is not a clanking cage, but a subtle architecture of the psyche itself, built from layered illusions, cognitive traps, and inherited programming that quietly shapes the contours of your inner world and the society you inhabit. You may ask, how can something so invisible hold such unyielding power? The answer lies in the secret machinery of the mind, the silent puppeteer pulling strings beneath your awareness. Consider first the cognitive biases, the mental shortcuts and distortions your brain deploys automatically, giving shape and order to the chaos of experience, but also steering you away from uncomfortable truths. Confirmation bias leads you to seek out evidence that fits your existing beliefs, blinding you to contradictions or uneasy realities. The comforting hum of repeated narratives feeds the illusion of certainty, making you unwilling or unable to question the foundations beneath your feet. It's a survival mechanism, after all, the brain's way of avoiding overload. But this salvation is a double-edged sword. It builds prisons of certainty, while the walls of ignorance rise imperceptibly around you. Then there is the neurological wiring that favors ease, pleasure, and repetition. Your brain is a pattern-seeking engine fueled by dopamine, those tiny chemical signals that reward familiarity and punish novelty with a jolt of anxiety. The path most often traveled becomes the path easiest to follow, the groove worn deep in your cerebral circuits. Change, real, seismic change, demands that you break free from those grooves, a process that feels like pulling teeth from the void. The pain of unlearning is often greater than the pain of remaining numb, and so your neural pathways harden into habits of thought and feeling that resist disruption. It is no accident that the strongest incentive to sleep lies in comfort, in the steady rhythm of known illusion. But the true force beneath these biases and neurological whispers is cultural conditioning, an invisible scaffold erected over generations, mostly unnoticed until you try to dismantle it. From the moment you learn language, you are inducted into a collective dream, a shared framework of values, symbols, and stories that tell you who you are and what the world is supposed to be. This matrix is immense, extending through media, education, religion, family, and peer groups. It is the lens through which you interpret everything, often so transparent that questioning it feels like madness or betrayal. The culture teaches you to crave security more than truth, to value belonging over freedom, to accept narratives that soothe the masses rather than ignite their minds. Each societal ritual, from the daily commute to the consumption of mindless distractions, is a thread weaving you tighter into a fabric of compliance. The invisible hand of propaganda sculpts not just your opinions but your very desires, priming you to consume, conform, and consent without realizing you are consenting at all. The more you inhabit this conditioned state, the easier it becomes to drift, to acquiesce, to accept the scripted roles handed to you. It is a subtle anesthesia, less violent, more seductive than chains or cages, a velvet noose tightening gently but relentlessly. You begin to see how the individual and society reflect one another, each feeding the other's sleep. Systems don't just impose, they seduce. The seduction is so complete because it promises safety, identity, and meaning, three pillars humans clutch desperately in the dark. Yet these very promises are the source of the trap. Safety becomes a fortress of denial. Identity, a rigid mask that blinds you to your infinite potential. Meaning, a fixed story that dismisses the restless call of something beyond. And here lies the cruel paradox. The very mind designed to free you, your consciousness, your reason, becomes the instrument of your captivity. This is no external enemy to overthrow, but an internal terrain to navigate, a psychological battlefield where your greatest adversary wears your face. The biases, the comfort-seeking neurons, the cultural narratives, they all conspire not to deceive some abstract other, but to ensnare you personally, intimately. Can you feel it now? The slow tightening of this invisible trap. The pressure to settle, conform, and sleep swells within you like the tide creeping over a dormant shore. It presses you to silence the questions that burn beneath your ribs, to dull the existential itch, to slide back into the warm shadow of collective slumber. Perhaps you have noticed how, when you challenge the dominant stories, the social fabric ripples with unease, how friends recoil, how old certainties crumble, how the weight of isolation threatens to drag you under. It is a warning and a gauntlet thrown. To awake is to risk everything you have known, every comfort you have built. Yet this battle is not fought only on the grand stage of society or intellect, but in the silent chambers of your own mind. The cognitive biases mask the truth in whispers. The neurological cravings bind your will in invisible chains. Cultural conditioning cloaks reality in the garb of normalcy. Together, they weave a spell so profound, you may never recognize your own imprisonment until the walls close in, and sometimes, not even then. What is the cost of this sleep? Not only the loss of freedom, but the tacit surrender of your soul's wildness, the spark that drives creativity, rebellion, and transcendence. While the sleepers cling to their illusions, the world shifts beneath them, urgent and burning but barely noticed. The great questions, the meaning of life, the nature of consciousness, the possibility of genuine freedom, fade into echoes dismissed as philosophical luxuries or dangerous distractions. And yet something stirs beneath this quiet despair, something ancient and relentless. It is the flicker of awareness, the faint defiance that whispers in the dark corners of your being. It is the call to wake, to challenge the biases, to rewire the neural grooves, to shatter the cultural scripts. But to hear it, you must first recognize the trap for what it is. Not an external force, but a complex web of psychological and societal patterns, spun with the skill of an artist and the cruelty of a jailer. The urgency of escape now feels undeniable. For to remain in this twilight of conditioned consent is to wither, to dim, to fade. The unseen trap is no passive backdrop, but an active predator, feasting on your latent potential, your unspoken truths. And yet, the very act of seeing it begins to loosen the bindings, to crack the cage. Still, the way out remains obscured, hidden beyond the horizon of current understanding. Before that horizon reveals itself, you must confront the full magnitude of what it means to be ensnared, not by chains or bars, but by the subtle interplay of mind and culture, biology and belief, safety and fear. Only then can the breakthrough begin. Only then can you move beyond the sleep that has become both your refuge and your prison. Does the weight shift within you now, a tremor of possibility beneath the crushing load? The trap is not invincible. It is a design, and every design has its flaw. But you must see the flaw in the dark before you can grasp the key. And to see it, you must first feel the suffocation, the invisible grip, and the terrible urgency to breathe free again. You stand on that precipice now. The fog is thick, the chains nearly unbreakable, but the air ahead whispers of a dawn not yet born. What happens next rests within you, in the silent spaces between thought and action, between sleep and awakening. The question is no longer why most people will never wake up, but whether you, against all odds, will. You have felt it by now, the oppressive gravity of everything that once seemed immutable, now cracking beneath the strain of awareness. The world you've known, the frameworks you've inhabited, the very architecture of your thought, they are not monoliths carved in stone, but fragile constructions held together by centuries of inertia, complacency, and an almost sacred reverence for the familiar. But what if every certainty you've clung to is precisely the prison that locks you in? What if freedom is not a distant horizon to be chased, but an audacious reversal of everything you thought you understood? To wake up is to shatter first the illusion of control, because the conventional understanding of control itself is the very thing that binds you. You have been told that waking means resistance, rebellion, breaking free by sheer force of will. That the mind is a battlefield where you must fight off the armies of conformity and fear. But what if the battlefield is a mirage? What if control is not something to be seized, but something to be relinquished? Paradox as weapon. To regain power, you must first surrender the need to dominate the internal and external world. This radical shift in perspective is not a small step. It's a revolution in how you think about your thinking. Imagine the layers of conditioning peeled back, revealing not chaos or emptiness, but a hidden rhythm, a coherence beneath apparent disorder. The mind is not a machine to be fixed or a fortress to be stormed. It is a garden to be tended, wild yet delicate, demanding radical attentiveness rather than brute force. Look to history's shadows for those who chose this path, the trailblazers who dared to unlearn what everyone else accepted without question. They were not merely rebels railing against the obvious oppressors. They were pioneers who embraced the uncomfortable truth that the world and their place within it was a mirage and a metaphor. Socrates whispered of knowing that you know nothing, a statement not of defeat, but of the first step toward real wisdom. The Buddha renounced all certainty to find liberation in surrender to impermanence. Nietzsche shattered the idols of absolute truth to open a space for self-creation beyond good and evil. Their awakening was not a dramatic break with the past. It was a subtle, relentless untangling of the web of assumptions that cocoon the unawakened mind. Yet this is not how awakening is commonly painted. The myth of the hero who slays dragons stroke by stroke, will by iron will, is seductive because it promises control through conquest. But in reality, every triumph born from domination is a new cage forged in the fires of aggression. True liberation is not carved from the outside in. It grows from the inside out, from the willingness to step into the void of uncertainty and find there not despair, but the fertile soil for new growth. What then is the method? How do you claim this new power, this reclaimed agency, when everything within screams for safety in the known? The answer lies in the paradox of surrender and creation, not as opposites but as co-creators. To surrender does not mean to lose yourself. It means to shed the false self that was constructed as armor and mask. In the space this shedding creates, a raw, authentic self can emerge, not fixed, not predictable, but alive and fluid. This self is not trapped by roles or narratives, but dances with them, shaping and reshaping in a constant flow. This mindset shift is not a comfortable Sunday morning meditation. It is a fierce confrontation with your deepest fears. Fear of chaos, of meaninglessness, of exposure. To wake up is to meet these fears head-on and discover that they are shadows cast by your own unexamined assumptions. This discovery is a radical act of reclamation, the realization that you were never truly captive by external forces, that the chains were illusions, limitations you absorbed unquestioningly. Consider the countless souls who broke free from their mental prisons. Rosa Parks refusing to yield her seat, not just as an act of social defiance, but as a declaration of internal sovereignty. James Baldwin wielding the power of truth to dismantle false narratives. Gandhi transforming inertia into a weapon by surrendering violence entirely. Their power lay not in brute strength, but in the profound shift in perspective that unmoored them from the accepted realities of their time. They rewrote the rules that bound them, and in doing so, they reshaped the world. You are part of this lineage, whether you recognize it or not. Buried deep within your being is the same capacity for radical transformation, waiting to be unearthed. The path is not linear. It will twist and turn, and the old voices of doubt will scream louder than ever in the face of such upheaval. But the very act of embracing uncertainty, surrendering the illusion of control, is the key to unlocking a new dimension of your existence. This awakening, this radical shift, is not about escaping the world, but about stepping fully into it with eyes unclouded by illusion. It is the rejection of passivity and victimhood, the refusal to accept that life happens asterisk to you rather than asterisk through asterisk you. You reclaim the narrative by recognizing the subtle ways you have become complicit in your own sleep. The stories you tell yourself, the assumptions you hold as inviolable truths, the comforts you cling to, all are threads in the web that must be unraveled. Herein lies the revolutionary power, not in fighting the system with its own tools, but in dismantling the very framework that gave the system power over you. The realization dawns that the ultimate control is not over external circumstances, but over your perception, your willingness to engage with the unknown, to embrace not knowing as a source of strength. Can you feel it stirring, the dormant agency pulsing beneath the paralysis? This is the moment where most falter, turning back to the familiar chains, the safe illusions. But you, on the edge of awakening, stand at a crossroads more profound than any before. To accept the discomfort of transformation or to sink back into the seductive anesthesia of conditioned sleep. The choice is not merely yours. It is the very act of choosing that heralds awakening. You begin by questioning everything, even the necessity of questioning. You dismantle the binary of awake or asleep, realizing that consciousness is a spectrum, a subtle dance between clarity and confusion. This dance is your liberation, your reclamation of control, not as dominion over others or circumstances, but mastery over the landscape of your own mind. You are discovering the revolutionary truth. Most will never wake up not because they lack the capacity, but because they resist the paradoxical surrender that true awakening demands. To see the flaw in the dark, to grasp the key, you must first let go of the desperate grip on the shadows themselves. The dawn ahead is real, but it is born not of light illuminating darkness from above, but of fire kindled within you, the fire of radical surrender, relentless questioning, and fierce compassion for the self you have yet to truly meet. This fire burns away the illusions and in the ashes births a new way of thinking, a new way of being, unshackled, unbound, unmistakably alive. Imagine that the world you have known, the world you have accepted as reality, is not the solid ground beneath your feet but a mirage dancing on the edge of a desert. All your struggles, every moment of confusion and despair, every fracture of hope and burst of clarity have been brushstrokes painting a canvas you believed was immutable. Yet now, as the final veil begins to lift, you confront an unsettling revelation. What you called life, what you called self, is not a thing but a process. A fluid, dynamic unfolding that defies the neat borders and labels you cling to. Nothing is fixed, nothing is stable. The ground is always shifting beneath you, and the only constant is the observer watching it all. This realization itself is the paradox at the heart of awakening. To be truly awake is to see that there is no fixed self to awaken into, only the continuous, unfolding mystery of consciousness, forever in flux. It is an invitation to embrace uncertainty so completely that fear dissolves into curiosity and rigidity melts into fluidity. You are no longer a prisoner of your thoughts, your history, your identity. Instead, you become a witness to the ceaseless play of light and shadow within you and all around you. Why then do most never reach this vantage point? Because surrendering the illusion of a solid self demands a kind of courage few dare muster. It is easier, comforting even, to build walls, to construct narratives that enclose and define, to pretend that the tumultuous river of life can be tamed or controlled. The average mind prefers the safety of known patterns, the security of repetition, the false stability of dogma. To confront the vastness without these anchors is to face a void that feels like annihilation, and it is precisely in that void that true awakening lives. But here is the radical redefinition that rewires everything you thought you understood. Awakening is not about reaching some exalted state, nor is it a destination where suffering ends or truth is handed down. It is not enlightenment as a peak to be conquered. Rather, it is the ongoing act of seeing clearly, even when the image shatters, even when the ground collapses beneath you. It is the courage to stand naked in the storm, not because you are impervious, but because you have come to understand the storm itself as part of the fabric of your being. This means every failure, every heartbreak, every moment of confusion and despair becomes a sacred portal. The past is not a chain but a teacher, harsh yet benevolent, carving out the shape of your awakening through its relentless pressure. All your suffering was never a detour or a mistake. It was the forge in which your consciousness is tempered and shaped. The greatest irony is that the pain you fled from, the dark you resisted, is the very raw material from which your freedom is born. And so you come to see that waking up is not an escape from reality, but a deeper immersion into its mystery. It is the profound acceptance that life is forever incomplete, forever a work in progress, forever asking you to show up with open eyes and a heart willing to bleed. The awakening you sought at the horizon was never separate from the chaos at your feet. It was born in it, inseparable and whole. Now standing at this precipice, you recognize that to wake up is to become the paradox itself, simultaneously fragile and vast, known and unknown, lost and found. It is to live without the illusion of control, but with the wisdom that surrender itself is the ultimate mastery. To be fully awake is to be fully present, to feel the scorch of the sun and the chill of the night within you, to hold joy and grief hand in hand, to drink deeply from the well of existence without clinging, without fear. The world does not change because you wake up. It remains indifferent, chaotic, beautiful, and brutal. But you, your perception, your relationship with this world, transforms utterly. The narrative you carried, the scripts you enacted, dissolve like mist at dawn, revealing the infinite expanse beneath. The shackles of conditioned sleep fall away, not as a grand spectacle but as a quiet, relentless unraveling. This is the final truth. Most people will never wake up because they mistake the dream for reality and cling to its shadows as their own substance. They swim in shallow pools, terrified of the depths, content with flickering images on the surface. But you, who have glimpsed the abyss and returned with eyes wide open, know that the true awakening is not an escape from the darkness, but learning to dance within it. So now ask yourself, the ultimate question whispered in the silence before dawn, will you choose the familiar comfort of sleep or the wild, luminous risk of awakening? Will you stay chained to the shadows or step into the fire that burns away illusion, even if the flames scorch and blind before they illuminate? There is no answer handed down from above, no roadmap etched in stone. The awakening is a solitary journey, a descent and ascent into the self that cannot be named, a surrender so profound it breaks you open and remakes you anew. It is the greatest paradox you will ever live, that in losing yourself you find yourself, that in the vast unknown you become the knowing itself. The hourglass empties and the dawn breaks, Not with torrent or thunder, but with a quiet trembling, a single breath exhaled into the vast silence. You stand at the threshold of a new reality, and the choice is yours. To awaken is to become the flame in the dark, the whisper beneath the roar, the dance of light and shadow eternally entwined. Will you rise, or will you sleep forever?